Okay, something really exciting and weird just happened. I was reviewing my comments on my YouTube channel, and somebody let me know that Chris Williamson, a YouTuber who's got 4.3 million subscribers, just used one of my video titles, one of my video leads, as the lead in to one of his video stories.
Optimization has become a disease.
The internet has a way of taking a good idea and squeezing every ounce of nuance out of it, turning it into something ridiculous, and I think that that's happened again. It's always been an unspoken rule that improving your life was fine, as long as you don't talk about it. But the moment that you mention it to anyone, you become insufferable. Now it appears this trend of anti-personal development is going viral. You've probably seen videos and articles with headlines like, "How personal development ruined my happiness."
And honestly, when I saw it, I was pretty excited, but I thought, holy crap, he's actually using the title from one of my videos. But then I watched what he did with it and I realized something very interesting. He was talking about the anti-self-improvement movement, but I think he missed the point, and I think he actually missed something very interesting. Something that I don't think anybody on either side of this argument is actually talking about. So Chris, hey man, seriously, thank you very much. You've got 4.3 million subscribers. You didn't need to use some old dude from Niagara to lead with your video, but I truly appreciate it and I really appreciate the shout out. So here's what your video got me thinking about. Maybe the problem isn't self-improvement. Maybe the problem is our obsession with self-improvement. You know, everybody's talking about getting fit, making more money, being more disciplined, optimize your life, become your best version of yourself. Yeah, but here's the question nobody seems to be asking is, what is this optimized best version of yourself supposed to be used for? I've spent the last 20 years of my life as an endurance athlete, the last 15 years of my life as an Ironman triathlete. I have pushed myself harder and farther than I ever thought possible. My belief system of what I thought possible kept getting expanded. The more I trained, the further I went, the further and more I thought would be possible for my life. And then I got into a pursuit of being better. How can I be quicker, faster, stronger? And then I learned something by Sean Aker. You know, I think I was always looking for this pursuit of happiness. I thought when I reach this goal, I'll be happy. When I've got $1 million in the bank, I'll be happy. When I cross that next Ironman finish line and make it to Kona, I'll be happy. And here's the thing that's fundamentally broken about our idealism in North America, at least from my perspective. And that is, I was raised, which most people are in North America, with the value that when you set a goal for yourself and when you achieve that goal, you'll be happy. And you've got to be super disciplined all the way through to get there. What happens though is when you reach that goal, I can tell you when I've hit a sales goal, you get this immediate gratification, this hit of dopamine. And I don't want to celebrate. I want to go experience that again. So I immediately start picking up the phone and making more sales calls because I'm excited and I want to have that experience. I want that dopamine rush again. The same thing happened for the first time I crossed my first Ironman finish line. I crossed the first half Ironman finish line and went, ooh, I know I can do that bigger thing, that scary thing. I need to do that. Didn't allow myself to be happy at all. Crossed that first finish line in just under 17 hours in Louisville in 2011 and went, oh, that was awesome. I turned around and looked at my time and went, oh, I made so many mistakes. I could be so much better. And I remember the very next day, as we were waiting to drive home, sitting there thinking to myself, where's my next race going to be? And will my wife and family support me in doing that? Because that's when it starts to dawn on you that this is a very, very selfish activity. Even though the end result is that you're this fit, healthy person, it comes at a cost, and you've got to find a way to balance that out. So let's talk about that. Stage one in any self-improvement journey is that you got to get better. You got to find a system, a process. You have to have a vision for what it is you want to do. You've got to have a process that's proven that you can follow, and you've got to have the proof, the metrics that you're actually moving forward. And you get very obsessive about that. Like right now, I'm on a 90-day challenge to lose 20 pounds, and I'm very obsessive about what I'm eating, what I'm putting into my body, how much I'm exercising every day. But I'm also very mindful that my wife is impacted by the decisions that I make, and it impacts her life as well. She said to me on the weekend when I was struggling about having a glass of wine, she said, well, I'm not going to have any wine if you're not having any wine. I said, but you're not doing this challenge with me. She said, but I'm not going to drink a whole bottle of wine by myself, and that's no fun. So, I have to realize that what I'm doing impacts what she's doing. And there's a direct relationship between the two of us that my selfish behavior of trying to lose 20 pounds has to find a way to become selfless in supporting my wife at the same time. So as much as she's supporting me and wanting to see me lose those extra pounds, I have to be selfless in supporting what she wants to do, because she's giving up stuff for me. She's giving up that nice glass of wine with dinner to help me realize my goal. So at the same time, I got to do stuff to support her, things that I may not want to do. It could be something as simple as just listening to her radio station on the radio as we go for a drive, because that's the easiest, most selfless thing I can do. And she doesn't particularly care for my choice of music. I'm a classic rock guy. She's a big city pop girl. So she wants to listen to her dance tunes and I want to listen to classic rock. But that's the one small thing that I can do to be selfless, to say, hey, I appreciate you being selfless in your support of me. And I think that's the big trigger that keeps that selflessness in check. The second Ironman that I did not do it in Louisville, Kentucky, where my wife and kids had a horrific experience in being shuttled around the countryside of Louisville. No offense to Louisville, but it was just not a fun experience for a mother dragging 2 teen kids around who don't want to be there in the hot summer sun. So to sell the next Ironman, I actually did that at a vacation resort in Cozumel, Mexico. And I remember very distinctly, my friends came down. They were actually vacationing on the mainland. They came over on the ferry and hung out with my wife, my daughter, and her friend who had come to the race to support. I said, you guys, I don't even want to see you on race day until the finish line at the end of the day. But as bike course goes past the resort, maybe come out and, wave your margaritas at me. And that's exactly what they did. I heard them cheering me on and they laughed and went right back to playing beach volleyball, swimming in the pool, and having drinks all day. So, I had to find a way to make it enjoyable for everybody. And rather than say I'm going to go do Louisville again, no, I found a destination race that would be more exciting and thinking of the people who are supporting me in that journey. So if stage 1 is self-improvement, stage 2 is self-mastery. This is all about almost being obsessive compulsive about certain things like diet and exercise. I like discipline. I become very obsessively compulsed to measure, understand the food that I'm eating. I go into social settings when I'm being disciplined, when I'm training. And right now I would consider this 90-day, 20-pound weight loss. I would consider this the same type of training that I do for the Ironman, in that I'm very disciplined about what I'm doing. I'm measuring my food. I'm measuring the calories in. I'm measuring the calories out. I'm doing things for exercise that excite me. But I'm also including my wife in this 90-day program, in the sense that she wasn't a runner. She didn't run with me, but she's been walking. And I've actually changed my morning run to a morning walk to include her. And it's also to let my back recover a little bit from 20 years of running. So, that self-mastery, that idea that I want to control everything around me. When you have that mentality of control, you start to develop anxiety when things happen that are outside of your control. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that the Ironman taught me over the last 20 years, is that you can really get obsessive about every minute and minor detail, because you really don't know which of those little details is going to be the one thing that either side rails you and doesn't allow you to finish or reach your goal, or is it the one thing that could propel you to move forward? Here's the thing, is, you shoot for the star, you shoot for the moon. If you land in the stars, you're in a good place. I've always said that there is no guarantees in life. There is no guarantees just because I'm an Ironman that I'm not going to get chronic disease one day down the road like my father did. All I can do is I can be a lifelong learner. I can look for that continuous improvement, so that the aggregate of 1% gains. I love that philosophy. I went for a bike ride with Dr. Greg Wells. He's a world-renowned speaker. He was a research scientist at Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. He was used by CTV, I believe, in the Olympics to help people understand the science of the human body and what professional athletes were going through. This is a guy who trains and does research on the very limits of what's possible for the human being. And when I talked to Greg, he wrote a book called The Ripple Effect, and we went for a bike ride one day in the beaches in Toronto by his home. And we just had this wonderful conversation, and everything he talked about that was backed in science, I had experienced in Ironman racing. And I took my 60 years of perspective, well, maybe it was probably 50 years at that time. It was about 10 years ago. And I just said, I've been in search of all of these things that I've been trying to control. And the reality is I can't control anything that's going to happen to me in the next 10 minutes, 24 hours, weeks, days, years. I can't control any of it. What I can control is how I react to my circumstances that I currently find myself in. Today, I want to move 1%. I want to be 1% better today than I was yesterday. And if that just means that I'm 1% better with my relationships, if I'm 1% better with my diet, if I'm 1% better with how I exercise, if I'm 1% better about what I learn, then I am leaning towards not being obsessive compulsive about certain things. I'm leaning towards wanting to understand, be a lifelong learner, but have the perspective to step back, take the blinders off and go, with all of this weird stuff that I'm doing that isn't normal by any stretch of the imagination, who am I hurting? Who am I impacting? And that's a valid question that I don't think a lot of people ask. I remember being told once that amongst Ironman triathletes, the divorce rates are very high because you become so selfish in your activity, so controlling in your activity, that you let everything else around you slip. And that's not what this is about. For me, that's not what it's about anyway. And that's why in my video, when I said, it almost killed me, it did. It almost ruined my life. But then I learned the lesson. And the lesson is you can't be so selfish that you implode. You have to go from that selfishness of control to that selflessness of saying, how can I be in control? How can I do certain things? But how can I also be respectful of everybody around me who's trying to support me? I hear on the internet all the time people talking about being in service of others. I think that's the beautiful part about leading by example. And I've always said that is that my goal as a father, as a husband, as a member of our community is to lead by example. Be the best person that I can be. Don't talk about it to nauseum. And when people come up and ask me questions, be a decent human being and answer those questions back. So I'm super stoked that Chris used my lead in for his story. I just wish that maybe at some point he might give me a call and say, hey, really, what's your perspective on this thing? Because I really have, I think, a healthy take on turning that negative selfishness into a really positive selflessness. So Chris, thanks again for watching my video. Thanks again for using it as the lead to one of your videos. And it really got me thinking. So now I've got a question I'd like to ask you, Chris, about this whole debate. If self-improvement is about becoming the best version of yourself that you can be, what happens when the best version of you stops being about yourself? What do you think, Ralph? Was that a good one? Oh, was it super boring? I don't know. I think it was a good video. What do you think? You don't look impressed.